Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Oh,
That's all right. That's all right.
but start the whole thing
Start
over.
the whole thing over. We started with the disco lights, and that was really
And I actually
really all we
intentionally
needed.
didn't say anything because I was on the mic the last time we got a new member, and I said, "There's a new member, like super chat in the hat," and I don't know why I said that. But I'm still so embarrassed.
What I was saying before we came on, I think this is the best game of the year for the Avs. I'll be the one to come right out and say it. I think 4-0 on the second night of a back-to-back. Who says it's a scheduled loss? Jesse Montano, Chloe Thiel, Meghan Angley, now that you can hear us. Jay behind the glass today, making sure that the disco lights are up and running, which he's doing an outstanding job of. Meghan, I'm going to start with you. Your thoughts, 4-0 for the Avs here tonight in New Jersey.
It was a little dicey in the first period, too. But what I like so much about this game, in addition to Scott Wedgwood pitching a shutout, which is incredible, is second night of a back-to-back. Things are a little dicey in that first period, but at no point would I use the word tired to describe the Colorado Avalanche. They were competing for pucks the whole night, and I think that's what rewarded them. Had such a stifling defensive second period, great penalty kill in the third period to put this game away. I'm just so happy top to bottom with how they played. Even going down yet another player and losing Nikolai Kovalenko, they weren't making any excuses. Second game in a back-to-back, losing a player, it didn't matter. They were so competitive tonight, and I am very proud of this team right now.
I loved your year wrap. That was
It's like 1,039 now.
That was so good. You made the comment a few nights ago, or I guess it was a few days ago, ahead of that Buffalo game. You're like, well, hey, maybe we'll get to see Scott Wedgwood tonight if Georgie falls apart. That's exactly what happened. Scott Wedgwood came in, didn't give up a single goal on 22 shots. Doesn't technically get the shutout there, but holds the Avs in it long enough for them to come back and get a win. Plays fine a couple nights ago in Carolina, but Chloe, again, just a really solid performance. Maybe not called upon a bunch. Got to be happy with Scott Wedgwood, right?
Happy. And this is, I mentioned this to you, and this is something that I wanted to bring up after last night was I'm tired of the back and forth situation with the goaltending, and this is something that I do myself. But, when Wedgwood came in relief for Georgie and he played well, then it was kind of this mindset of, okay, well, maybe Wedgwood should be our number one. And then he kind of had an okay performance against Carolina, and then Georgie played really, really well last night. And now it's kind of like, okay, well, maybe Georgie always was our number one. And now it's like, okay, now they both had really great performances. And I want to be done with that mindset. I want the mindset to be that these are both goaltenders playing for the same team that want to play for their team. And it's a team effort, and it's not one goaltender coming after the other goaltender. And that Wedgwood says the same thing. He comes in and everything that he says, gives credit to Georgie. You know, like you said earlier, the first thing he said when he got the hat was giving credit to Georgie. He gives Georgie the hat last night and gives credit to him. So I'm over my mindset of we need to pick one or the other, and one is my starter, one always playing better. That's not the mindset anymore. We both play for the same team, and this is teamwork.
I hope Gorgie gives it right back to Scott
Nah,
Wedgwood,
wouldn't that-
and they
Right.
they monopolize the big hat and they just keep giving it back to each other.
Mhm.
To your point, Chloe, we talked about this the day that they made the trade, that everything that you're saying is why they made this move.
Mhm.
They wanted to eliminate the noise around the goaltending position, and they just wanted two guys to go out there and play.
Mhm.
Just go play. Just what did Scott tell us the day that he got here? Stop the puck. It's not that hard. Someone asked about learning systems and new teams. He's like, yeah, maybe a little bit, but stop the puck. That's what we're here to do. And it does feel like they are starting to develop a goalie room there a little bit.
Mhm.
We're, again, not that I thought Jussi Sananen and Alexander Georgiev didn't get along, but this feels like a 1-2 tandem here that's supporting each other and trying to push each other to get the best out of them. And guess who wins when they do that? The Avs. The team wins.
Everyone wins.
Everyone wins. Everyone's friends. Everything is awesome. But the Avs go a perfect 2 for 2 in this back-to-back on a long weekend that, Megan, you and I said after the Carolina game, you have to get at least 2 points coming out of the weekend. It's just too important with where you sit in the standings. And they find a way to carve out all four. That's why, to me, this is the best game of the season so far for the Avs, not just because of how they played, which I do think it was one of their better games of the season. We used the word desperation the other night. They needed these points, and they came out and took care of business in a way that wasn't like, lucky to get away with those points. Looked good in back-to-back nights.
Mhm.
And it's not like New Jersey didn't bring their A game. I will say, best power play in the league, missed the net a lot.
Mhm.
Very fortunate for the Avs because I know that New Jersey is capable of better than that. They started to figure it out too in their later man advantage opportunities for Colorado, which really challenged their PK. But Colorado's PK was good tonight. They had answers for it, even generating some shorthanded opportunities. And when those were unsuccessful, I love Keaton Middleton breaking up the odd man rush, coming back the other way after that attempt on the 4v4 late in the third period there. Just a lot of things to get excited about. And I do think, too, it's made possible having two goaltenders that you can trust and turn to, that the team, I think, derives confidence in having a freshly rested Wedgwood tonight after a stellar performance from Georgiev the night before. I think it's just easy to get a little excited around the momentum that they're building. And I think the excitement leads to competitive play. And I think that's what they showed tonight.
I want to ask you, Chloe, because when I asked you guys before the third period, I said, what do you want to see? And you referenced the fact that you called out Sam Malinski in particular, but you were saying the defense as a whole is really moving the puck up ice. They're playing on offense a lot. They're playing in the devil zone. You said, I just want to see him keep doing that. And that moved us to the conversation of that's when this Avs team is defending at their best, when they just don't let you have the puck. We were laughing in the middle of the third period. You're like, I don't know what to talk about in this third period. And to me, that came as a product of the Avs didn't let anything get overly exciting. It felt like a lot of they didn't sit back on a 3-0 lead.
Yeah. And I mean, it is still exciting for them to have a shutout, but
right.
You give a lot of credit to the goalie for shutouts, and not to say that Wedgwood doesn't deserve the credit for this, but I think it was an entire team effort. And I honestly think that the defense made it easy for him. So it wasn't as exciting as
like the comeback over Buffalo.
Maybe, yeah, or like it was just, it was their game. And sometimes you shouldn't have to get excited over just them just playing their game, but it is exciting for them to see that.
It's exciting. Boring games like that are exciting for like hockey people like us. We're just like, oh man, did you see that sick play? Oh, what a rotation there on that pass. It was exciting in that way. I'm with you.
Yes,
for sure.
It was exciting to see them pull this off.
Now, granted, that win pulls the Avs back into a wild card spot temporarily. The Calgary Flames are currently playing the Dallas Stars. Calgary Flames, if they were to win, would bump the Avs out of the playoffs. However, that win also pulled them even with the Dallas Stars for third in the Central Division. Dallas has 2 games in hand at the end of the night, so we'll see what happens. Calgary and Dallas are playing each other, so the Avs one of those things won't happen by the end of the night. But just from a point standpoint, because that's what we talked about after that Carolina game, Megan, that was why this weekend was so important. You just couldn't allow yourself to slip too much further out of that playoff picture. With back-to-back wins, they've at least pulled that conversation right back to them. They're back in the mix. Will either finish the night in a wild card spot or tied for third in the division with tiebreakers and things like that. So good on the Avs. You get a day off tomorrow. Then you head into Pittsburgh to round out this road trip. I want to go back to the goalies and what Chloe was talking about a little bit with the back and forth of this guy's a starter. No, this guy's a starter. No, this guy's a starter. I think right now Jared Bednar is probably happy with what he's seen on this road trip out of his goaltenders, in that for a stretch there, it felt like I didn't feel comfortable going to any of these guys. I think you'll feel pretty good about what your goaltending has given you through 4 games of this road trip.
I think a strong performance from Georgiev in Detroit too helps to solidify. He's still the guy that they turn to for starting minutes. I expect for them to go back to Georgiev for the Pittsburgh game. And I think the noise of, well, should Scott Wedgwood be the starter? I think that it's probably more external. Like, it's probably within the fan base crying out for that. I'd like to hope that inside the Avs locker room, it's a little quieter, because I think they probably adopt Chloe's mindset more than anything, that Georgiev, I think he wears the title of the starter, but there's just a general trust in both goaltenders to give them a chance to win on any given night, making for more of a 1A, 1B goalie tandem, which is kind of how they were supposed to be constructed going back to Francouz when he was supposed to be backing up Georgiev. And I think Georgiev can live with that. I think he's going to have to, but I think more than anything, the team can live with that. I think that makes it a little easier to have confidence in the goaltending situation, just compared to what it was pre-Oninen.
This just gives them an opportunity to take a deep breath. We finally have, a back-to-back where you have both goaltenders play, and each night they put out a good performance. So I think that this is an opportunity for everybody to just take a deep breath, including me, because I feel like this, but that's why I say I'm done with the back and forth, because now that we have a solid performance from both goaltenders, you can't really go back and forth right now.
You're right. And like, again, part of the reason why I feel like they brought in Wedgwood is to get rid of that, like, crowning a starter after every win.
Right.
It's just
that's what everybody has been doing, including me. This is not on anybody. The reason I say this is because I do this myself, but you can't base a goaltender's performance off of one game and just keep going back and forth.
Right. What Chloe just said is actually why getting goaltenders is so difficult in the NHL, because it's just hard to evaluate them based on smaller sample sizes. We have a comment here in the chat that says it really should be more like an Ullmark Swayman split than it should be a true 1-2. We've learned that Georgie can't be trusted with a heavy number one workload. Again, I feel like that goes a little bit back to what Chloe's talking about here of you're going to err on the side of Georgie, but you now feel confident in the other guy that you've got. And if you need to go to Wedgwood for 2 games, 3 games, as he's shown he's capable of doing, that you can do that. But if Alexander Georgiev is on one of his, hot streaks that he will go on, over the course of a season, you're more than comfortable to ride that as well. I just think that the move with Scott Wedgwood and what we've seen here over the last week has just taken the pressure off of the immediacy of the goaltending problem. Yes, it probably is still something you may need to address at some point. You are far from saying you're out of the woods on it, the Wedgwoods on it, but it feels like it's lifted a little bit of a weight.
Because I think there's an understanding with Wedgwood coming in that his scheduled starts aren't because he's auditioning for the starting goaltender position. I think that we can speculate that good performances from Wedgwood could lead to that. But I think from Georgiev's perspective, he's sweating it a lot less to see them turn to Wedgwood to get a start. And even though he probably wants that start, just knowing who he is, I think there's a little less pressure now when he's not getting it and they're turning to Wedgwood. And he seems to come back a better goaltender on the other side of it. And I think that I look back to like 2 seasons ago, I think it was more the fan base really wanted Fleury to come to Colorado to be this veteran presence that Georgiev could lean on and sort of share this tandem workload. And I think that Wedgwood is not Marc-Andre Fleury, but I do think the similar mindset of Georgiev can benefit from having somebody that he can lean on and support him in net and isn't trying to take his job necessarily. And I think that's why Wedgwood complements him so well.
So let me ask you guys, though, on that note, because we kind of talked about this a little bit during the game. Is it a bad thing, or do you not care that you have a goaltender that does seemingly need to like be pushed a little bit and needs to maybe have his job called into question for him to take his game up? Does that bother you, or is it like, if you're stopping the puck, who really cares?
I think I've said this before, but it does bother me. And that was something I said with the uses trade too, was why are we trading our backup to help our starter perform? I'm trying to think of a good way to put this without sounding like a downer. I don't think it's the worst thing that you have a little pressure. But I also don't think that if you are the set starting goaltender for this team, that you should need the pressure to succeed.
So I totally get what you're saying, because it's not saying he doesn't have the ability to play at that level, but it's like, are you really a starter if you need someone else to be constantly pushing you towards the edge for you to like feel that desperation? Shouldn't you be able just to bring that out in yourself?
It kind of feels right now like we have two backup goaltenders trying to push each other to become a starter.
Yeah. Which is what I felt like this team had with Pavel Francouz and Darcy Kemper. And it's part of why I think that tandem was so effective, despite people not always being 100% sure about it. Any other thoughts on goaltending here before we move on? Sorry. See, you've got one loaded up.
In the same way that you're probably not a bona fide starter if you need somebody to push you into being a starter, you're also not a very good backup if you need to get regular starts to stay good. That's just kind of the nature of being a backup sometimes. And that isn't to criticize Justus Annunen. They just couldn't afford to give him regular starts that a young developing goaltender kind of needs to get acclimated in the league, whereas Wedgwood doesn't need that. He's going to show up and perform whenever he's called upon. I do think the Avs are smart to give him more starts. I think they can trust him with a few more than they could with Annunen, because it's the nature of the room that we're in. I don't like it too much either that we're in this room with Georgiev, but they need to string together points. And right now with Wedgwood and Georgiev as the options, they're getting some points.
And this will be my last thing on goaltenders.
I have one last thing too.
And maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm putting too much stock into this. Did you guys see Wedgwood as the clock expired, banging his stick on the ice, celebrating with the guys? There's a comment that came through here that said no synergy with the previous tandem. Again, not that I ever thought that Justus Annunen and Alexander Georgiev were at odds. There's just there's a lightness and a sense of energy that Scott Wedgwood, I think, has somehow, as the backup goaltender, kind of breathed into this team a little bit. And just that little bit there, just getting the group going at the end of the game, a shutout where, you could easily, be, if you're Scott Wedgwood, taking the credit of all that stuff. No, he's sitting there rallying the guys, getting the team going, and just being a part of the celebration. And I just can't help but feel that that's an overwhelmingly positive thing to have.
I feel like I felt that energy from him too, from his first presser that we ever did.
Yeah.
You just had a good feeling about him. But one other thing I wanted to talk about, somebody in the comments said, so are we going to act like Wedgwood hasn't been way better than Georgiev? This is kind of exactly what I was saying, is we've had 3 solid performances from Wedgwood. And usually I would get really excited about that, but that's what I'm not going to do that this time. Because when you get excited about 3 good starts from Georgie, then usually it kind of flips the other way. We're at a good point with Wedgwood and with Georgie, and I want to make sure that both of them get credit for it and that it's not one over the other.
Well, you need adequate sample sizes too. Goalies are going to go through all kinds of streaks. Yeah, if we get 3 months down the road, 2 months down the road, coming out of, going into 4 nations, and it's like, yeah, Scott Wedgwood has been clearly better than Georgiev, then
Right.
okay, let's have that conversation. But let's wait a little bit. There's two other guys that I want to talk about here, and we can kind of go quickly, and then we'll get into a couple questions that I've got starred here from the chat. Ross Colton, dress for less. My goodness. Not that he was
Score the puck for less.
score the puck for less. Oh wow, that was a good one. Not that he was like show stopping tonight, but just showing his value. Again, we talk about how much it looks like Casey Middlestat is benefiting from playing with Ross Colton. Ross Colton scores a goal. Casey Middlestat, the primary assist. Casey Middlestat, another primary assist later in the game when it pushes the score to 3-0. The effect that Ross Colton had coming back into this game, your guys' thoughts?
I feel like a broken record because his impact is similar to my assessment in the Detroit game too, but he's noticeable shift by shift, not just needing to score goals every shift, but throwing the body around, coming up with pucks, competing for pucks, and in his own end, selling out to block shots. That was true for the whole of this team tonight too. They walk away with the block shot lead again in this contest, and I think that helped to save them on the PK a lot tonight. But I'm looking at Ross Colton and his overall effort to compete. He is, I think you described him as an engine of that second line, the Val Pals, as
Yeah.
Chloe has
Pals.
named them. And I think it's really true. He brings the energy in how hard he competes every shift. And I think that's what sort of made that line feel like the blueprint for what they need to be doing 5v5. I feel Ross Colton's a huge part of it because, again, not every shift the puck is going in the back of the net, but he's just so good at doing the right things and getting to the net front. And his teammates are now starting to sort of find one another too. And I look at the Ross Colton goal, described it in the intermission report a little bit, but that is every man in that 5-man unit doing exactly what they're supposed to do, starting with Nichushkin racing for the puck and winning that race to win it back, getting it out high to Gerard, chipping it away then behind the goal line for Middlestat, has to weather a little bit of a challenge from Dougie Hamilton on his back, finds Ross Colton at the net front, takes awareness from both players too to make that play happen. Casey has to feed that puck through two skaters, and Ross Colton has to get his stick on the ice. It goes straight onto his blade to lift it into the net. And all of that is good decision making. I think that Ross Colton specifically on the doorstep of a lot of high danger opportunities in the Detroit game. And again, tonight, it doesn't really look like he's a player who's been recovering from a broken foot for weeks on end and missed significant hockey. And I nicknamed him Russ Golton at the beginning of the year because he had that hot streak of 8 goals and he's just got his 9th. Like, who's to say Ross Golton isn't back?
So Ross Colton becomes the first player in Avalanche history to get the big hat twice.
Oh.
I was hoping to do goalie.
Yeah. Keep it going back and forth. Chloe, any thoughts on Ross Colton that Megan didn't already hit on? Or I guess you can also just repeat back everything.
Not
Megan
really.
said.
Let me just repeat word for word everything you said.
Find a way to say Val Pal.
I always say a lot of people think this, and when I say a lot of people, I really just mean these are my thoughts, and I hope that other people can agree with it. But the worry of him coming back and maybe not being as hot as he was when he left, and like Megan said, you would have never known he had a broken foot 2 weeks ago. Just no clue. Absolutely no clue. And
it's not impacted.
Yeah. I mean, he comes back and he shows that he deserves the spot that he's in every single day. And that did not change one bit.
Your guys' nicknames are catching on up here quickly.
What, Val's Pals?
Val's Pals, Ross Golton, Casey Middlestat. We don't spend a ton of time here. 2 points, both primary assists. Really nice pass from behind the net out front to Ross Colton, and then a beautiful stretch pass to hit Arturi Lehkonen. Those are the types of plays we were starting to get used to seeing out of Casey Middlestat. Is he back or are we waiting?
He feels back.
He feels back? All right.
Look at his body language. Not just on the bench. He's smiling like crazy. He just looks like he's having fun playing hockey again. But I feel like a broken record, but it's things he's doing while starting in his own end. You know, at the start of this game, I felt like the Avs weren't really clean in their exits. The D was doing what they needed to break out the puck, but the forwards were not able to move it out of the zone. And Casey Middlestat was among the forwards who could. He was finding pucks, nifty passes to move them up out ice and out is what I'm trying to
That's
say.
a tough one. That is a tough one.
Scott Wedgwood. Just had to refresh the palate a little bit there. And I think Middlestat making good decisions in his own end, one, just a really great turning point. There have been some mistakes because of poor decision making, but it leads to more connectedness in the offensive zone. And that's why I think that read below the goal line for that Ross Colton goal to start things off, that's Casey Middlestat starting to think the game more on instinct, which is what we wanted to see from him. And I think getting the monkey off his back also helps. I think it was a huge confidence booster because this is a player to me that seems to be playing with more confidence. Everybody on his line is going right now. Like Nichushkin has also kind of come alive in this last stretch, and he's just ripping pucks on net at every opportunity. And he's getting rewarded here and there for it too. That line is just buzzing, and I think it starts with a confidence boost in Casey.
Confidence feels like it goes a long way. All right, we're going to wind things down a little bit here. We got a few questions. I don't know if you guys have any questions that you have on Twitter. I've got 2 for us here that I pulled out of the chat that I thought we could just kind of get everyone's thoughts on. Technically 3. The first one is, did JJ leave the pod? JJ will be back when he's done making so much money being a real estate agent. He'll be back around at some point. I keep trying to bully him into coming in. JJ will be back. First question here from Brooke. You've talked in the past about Georgie doing better when playing fewer games. Is there an ideal split for starts you have in mind? Right now, for me, my answer is I want to see them play whoever's hot. But if we're really going based on Georgie's a starter, Wedgwood is the backup, I'd like to see at most a 3 and then 1, 3 and then 1. Maybe even for right now, just with how things are going, a 2-1, 2-1, 2-1. But I don't want either guy either going too long without playing or too many consecutive starts.
I like the 2-1. That's what I was going to say. 2-1, 2-1. What's that, like 60, 40?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
That feels good to me, so that
Mhm.
each of them have an opportunity to get some consistency while also having an opportunity for the other one to come in.
And staying fresh.
Yes.
It's so early, but what I like is that they gave Wedgwood the New Jersey game. And I feel like there are other times where, honestly, even when we were predicting the split, we thought Wedgwood would get the Detroit game.
Mm-hmm.
I like the 2-1 kind of split, but not being afraid to give your backup goaltender games that are expected to be difficult and challenging against Stanley Cup contenders. Because if this is the tandem you expect to ride into the playoffs with, you need to see what both goaltenders look like against Stanley Cup caliber teams.
Love it. Last question here from Keaton Schneider. Got through the tough stretch with the schedule the past 2 weeks. A great chance to make hay in the next 5-6 games with playoff opponents. I mostly want to focus on that first part there. This is such a tough stretch of the schedule that they're in. So much on the road, such a compact schedule. That's the other thing that I don't think we can gloss over too much here with them going 2-0 on this back-to-back. Is not only was it 2-0 on a back-to-back, but it was a back-to-back right in the middle of a 5-game road trip every other night up to this point. And the schedule hasn't been any easier when they've been at home. These have been tough opponents in a short amount of time. And I think more or less, you'll take the results they've gotten here.
Again, this is a lineup it's pretty depleted still. And we were just happy for them to escape at 500 hockey, but they're above that at this point. And I think winning against good teams is another important turning point in not only needing to come up with points when they need them, but even against maybe some difficult odds. And I think it says a lot about where this team is at right now in terms of their identity and what they're capable of, because the Carolina game was tough. That's another really good team that they struggled against, but some of it was self-defeating. And I think for them to have even made adjustments as quickly as they did, even though they didn't really get any sort of reinforcement, and the odds were only stacked against them more going into the second game of a back-to-back against a really good team, I really love what it says about the Avs, that they came up with not just a win, but a dominant one.
I don't even think it affects them that much that it's on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that are they doing better on the road than they are at home right now?
Ooh, I don't know that off the top of my head, but let me
it's not
find
like
out
they're
for you
doing
very
great
quickly.
at
It
home.
was trending that way earlier in the year, so you might be right.
The Avs are, where'd they go? 7-7 at home, 9-6 on the road. So a loss tonight would have put them at 7-7 at home, 8-7 on the road.
Yeah. So sort of even, but still, if they're playing somewhat the same as they are at home than they are on the road, I think even though this is a little bit of a tough stretch, I think that this is a big boost for them that they were able to play this back-to-back and take home a win on both nights.
I don't think that can be understated, that like this could be something. I talked about them building on things during the second intermission. I'm with you, Chloe. Like, I think this is one where it's like Jared Bednar talked to us last week about telling the guys to take pride in the results they're getting because of how depleted the lineup is, because of how up and down things have been for them from a personnel standpoint. I don't think you can undersell what you just pointed out, that, hey, you just proved that's a Stanley Cup. That's a number 5 team in the league.
Mm-hmm.
You just went in there on the second night of a back-to-back with them rested, and you took care of business. You didn't squeak out a win. You took care of business. That's got to be a big confidence booster.
As far as I know, with a fully healthy New Jersey team.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe a couple of guys missing here and there, but more or less, no real key contributors. Any final thoughts on this one, guys, before we get out for tonight?
I want to pose a question. It's from Katie, and I wanted to talk about the top line. So she asks, at what point do the contributions from the depth scorers help the top line to catch fire again? So I wanted to throw it to you guys first.
I'm sorry, I was reading a comment. Reread the question.
Words. At what point do the contributions from the depth scorers help the top line to catch fire again?
Well, I think it takes the pressure off, and it allows them to, like what we were talking about earlier with Alexander Georgiev, play their game. Megan, you brought it up a couple nights ago that you wondered, was the pressure, because it was definitely this way for a handful of games, was the pressure of having to carry so much of the offensive load leading to that top line, gripping the stick a little bit too tight when they couldn't, overthinking, overpassing, overplaying. I do think that was the case. And I think the depth scoring coming in support, it just helps alleviate that. And you can tell Nathan MacKinnon, just go out there and be Nathan MacKinnon. Be as great as you are. So does it have like a direct correlation to them taking off? I'm not sure. But I definitely think it helps just allow them to go out there and wheel and play against their matchups.
But on the other side of it too, I think that you see how well the second line performed tonight. You would think that would light a fire for the first line, don't you think? Like, I thought for sure after our second intermission that the third period you would see a lot of that from the first line, and you didn't really. So
it again, I think it's good that they've got a second line that can provide a little bit of support. But you don't want those top guys straying too far. You want to see them get going, because those are going to be the guys that get you over the hump. Do you have any thoughts on depth?
I do, because not the depth specifically.
Depth assistant,
because I do think it matters. And I think the top line looked great tonight. I think the score is not going to reflect that. Only Rantanen comes away with a point, I want to say, on the empty net goal. So they don't necessarily impact the score sheet, but you see the adjustments from Carolina, Detroit now into this game. And I feel like they're going to break through in the next game or so, just based on what they did tonight. One, they look a little more cohesive together. I think that's been the issue for them, is Jared Bednar has a really big challenge of trying to get the top 6 puzzle just to figure it out. And with the second line going, you then don't really want to tinker with that top line. So you want to just see them figure it out, because this is a group of guys who play together so much. They should be able to get things back on track. I really think they did tonight. At 5v5, they had 8 scoring chances for 20 Corsi 4 events, so the most possessive line, but they allowed 0 scoring chances against, at 5v5 specifically. There were times on the ice where individually there was some combination of them together, but as a whole complete line, they made very few mistakes tonight, and they started to create some meaningful opportunities. I think they are going to break through this any minute now, and you look at their time on ice, and it's trending even a minute, or at least definitely significant seconds less than it has been over the past few games. And it's because Jared Bednar can turn to the second and the third line to eat up a lot of those minutes. I think it is helping them in a big way. And I think this is one of the last times we'll be talking about them, hoping for them to get out of this little bit of a rut that they're in. I think they're about to.
I'm with you. I think that's going to do it for tonight. Final thoughts? Final thoughts? Final thoughts?
Nathan
No,
McKinnon's going to hurt somebody if he does it.
I was
He
gonna
looks so
say-
frustrated, but it's because he's so close.
I was gonna say, even though you have the second line, you know that there's never a day that McKinnon is like, well, maybe I'll take a little bit of time off now that the second line is stepping up. So yeah, it'll definitely be back soon.
It'll be back. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Right back here in the studio. Regular off ice pod coming tomorrow, 1:30, somewhere in there. But other than that, we'll be back here in the studio on Tuesday for Avs Pens as they round out this 5-game road trip. Jay back there behind the glass, making sure you guys can see us and hear us. Big shout out to the Denver Women's Sports Collective, who is here in studio with us all night. It was great having them around, but we'll be back at it. She's Chloe Thiel. That's Meghan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. Thank you guys so much. And it's disco time. It is disco time. Disco pod again. We start, we end. Guerrilla Sports Off Ice. Thanks so much, guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.